Ladies and gentlemen, we have Rod Fergusson from the Coalition in the house. It is so great to see you. Yes. First up, my friend, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
That's so cool. You guys finished another behemoth, another massive boss-size video game.
Yeah, the team at the Coalition is amazing. I'm so proud of them. They did such a great job, so I'm really happy.
That's great. When I watched the credits after the campaign, I think it's because I've been involved with the External Development Summit the last few years.
Yeah.
And we talked on stage one year at that event, which is a great event. I've become more aware of all the external teams that companies work with, and there were a lot of them that you guys work with.
It takes a village.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in order to do AAA at the quality that you want to do AAA at, it's not a one-team gig anymore. You have to do outsourcing and partner development and all that kind of stuff. So it's because it's like, to get it to that bar. Like for us, like Gears is always meant to be a visual showcase, and we always want it to be at the height of execution. And so to do that, it takes a lot of people.
How far up the chain is the importance of Gears kind of registered at Microsoft? Like, does Satya Nadella know what this game means to the community?
Yeah. That was I just had a one-on-one with Matt Booty before coming over here, and he was relaying to me the story of Satya coming up and congratulating him on a great game. So I'm like, I'll take that.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So, and then he spoke to the whole leadership team and talked about Gears 5 and what it means to the fans and that kind of stuff. So it's great. I mean, and we had, when we did our gold party, like our gold announced for Gears 4 in Vancouver, the board of directors were up, so I got to talk. Give a presentation to Bill Gates and Satya and all that stuff, and so and it was amazing to be able to like talk to them about Gears. And I was talking about, at that time, Gears 4, we had the big Gears Inc. tattoo stuff, and they were all looking at each other like, there's a Microsoft product that people get tattooed on their bodies, like what's going on? And so so it's all the way up to the board of directors. They know about it.
Do they play the game at that level?
That's a great question. I don't know that. I wasn't asking Bill what his KD was or anything like that. So I would hope, but they were excited. The funny thing was, like, after the presentation, like the boards, the directors were all coming to me going like, I want that shirt. I need some swag. Like, so it was kind of cool from that perspective.
I'm sure they get asked by a million people out there. Can you hook me up with the game?
Exactly.
You got any shirts or anything like that?
Yeah, so it's definitely all the way through, and I think part of that is the elevation of Phil now too, is sort of the way the game has been elevated inside of Microsoft, and so it's fantastic. I mean, and the response has been unbelievable in the way that people are talking about the importance of Gears to the new Xbox Game Studios and how we've set a bar for Microsoft and for this generation in some respects, and so that's great praise, and we love it.
And that was the mission. When you came back.
It was the mission. Yeah, that's what my speech to the team was like, this was the goal, like from when I came back in January 2014, like to get to, like, how often do you look at the 6th iteration of a game, of a franchise, and say this is the best? Yeah. And so it's not very often, but that was the goal when I came back in 14. And so now that we've got Pop doing great, we're still working on tactics and 5's response, and we're just doing the comics, the novels, and the clothes, and the movie. Like, it's really exciting time to be a Gears of War fan.
I follow Cliff Bleszinski on Twitter, and he's always thumping his chest and saying he's not getting back into games.
Right.
But he saw an ad for Gears 5 at a baseball game or something like that, and
right.
And I'm curious if you guys had any inclination, working on the first Gears, where this road would take you. I mean, you clearly knew you had something special there, but did you know it was going to be this important to games?
No. I mean, with Gears 1, definitely not. Like, we had no idea what we were building. Like, in the sense that the sort of the speech to the team afterwards was we've got lightning in a bottle here, but we didn't realize. Like, because, we were 24 hours from cutting multiplayer. Like, we had a weekend to prove that we could make multiplayer work before cutting it. And yeah, and it was just a lot of hard work. And so the notion of where it went on to, where it kind of defines what Horde mode, anybody who has a multi-wave against endless enemies, it's all called a Horde mode, even though that's our name. And there's a bunch of stuff that it helped, I think, set up what third-person shooters can do and cover-based shooters.
Yes.
So, and what I love about what's the response to 5 now is that we're sort of pushing the envelope in other ways. We're trying to be, more approachable, more accessible, more inclusive. We're trying to set a bar for visuals, a bar for sound. Like, Forbes just wrote a multi-page article just about our Dolby Atmos implementation. There's an article of over 1,000 words about Dolby Atmos alone. They don't talk about anything else but the Dolby Atmos.
Well, I mean, that's got to be so rewarding for a veteran like yourself that has come you know, from all different levels of the video game industry, and just watched it grow and grow.
Right.
To be given sort of the tools and the toolbox to be able to implement all of this stuff at the highest level.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the quality of the team, right? It's
Yeah.
just the people. That's what I talk about is one thing about the product. You remember the games you're making, but what I remember more is the teams I work with. And
Cool.
and that's, and when people are saying like, okay, you've been on and off with Gears for 15 years, like how are you still doing this?
Yeah.
And a lot of it is just like beyond getting to work on my favorite franchise is the fact that every day I get to come in and work with some of the most talented people in the industry and learn from them and grow from them. And so it's really exciting from that perspective. So, and the fact that, and Microsoft just gives me enough, and the studio enough leash to just do what we want to do. People want to write the story. They want to have the story of this overbearing corporate, you know, overseer who tells us to make Game Pass games that have to be this kind of way, and they want this story that doesn't exist. And,
Yeah.
and the reality is that Phil and Matt say, you know, here's your studio, go make great games, and you go, thank you very much, and off we go. And so they don't tell us what to build, they don't tell us how to build, we just like, they give us like, here's your money, figure it out, and we're like, great, and that's what we do.
I'm curious if you've got artists that are working on the team that are working on Marcus Phoenix's beard, and they look at you as a little bit of reference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For Gray, it's a good reference for Gray. Yeah. No, the funny thing was like if you watch the 2018 to 2019 where we shaved him and then unshaved him, yeah, it was this funny thing because I just felt like as you move from game to game, you want change in the characters.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, so Gears 4 had a beard. And now we're putting a beard on JD, and I'm like, I didn't want like everybody to be lumbersexual. I didn't want beards on every character, so I'm like, let's just shave Marcus. We'll shave Marcus. It'll make a difference between 4 and 5. And the response at E3 when everybody saw shave Marcus was like, what the hell? And I'm like, we may need to think about this again. And so I went back, and I had to send the mail to the team like, okay, put the beard back on, and everybody was like, yay! Like you could hear a cheer in the room. Like so, I was like,
Oh, he's still the best character.
Yeah, John is amazing.
He's
as Marcus.
incredible in the game too.
Thanks.
It's so fun. You know, that's one of the things about the game. I talked about it in my review. Is the I don't know, the permanence that you're creating with these characters, which nobody would have predicted with the first Gears.
Right.
You know, I mean, it was so fun and it was so important, but
Right.
it didn't feel like we'd be sort of caring about the people,
Right.
you know, and getting to know their children and caring about their children.
Right.
And I guess that's got to be another reward for you guys as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we tried to pivot away from, you know, like I think what was great about at the time in 2005, 2006 was to have these sort of iconic characters that were sort of, I call them archetypes, like oh, I get the sports hero, I get the, you know, the anti-hero, I understand these archetypes, but when you look at where they were in their 40s, you know, in that, and so they weren't really changing. The world was changing around them, but Marcus's personality doesn't change. Cole's personality doesn't change. So when we went to like Gears of War: The Next Generation, what I call the saga we're on now, we wanted people young, old enough to fight. So I didn't want to have 12-year-olds. I wanted them to be able to go to war. But I wanted them young enough to be able to be transformed by their journey, and so we set up a foundation in 4, but 5 is where you really get to see like JD gets something happens to JD that I won't spoil, but something happens to JD that transforms him. Kate is going through a transformation, and that is great to be able to take these stories because I feel like I look at the original saga as sort of the Tim Burton Batman, and I look at the new saga as sort of the Christopher Nolan Batman. Not like I'm not trying to say we're Christopher Nolan, we're not.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like from a sensibilities, like one is a little bit over the top, a little bit more kind of comic booky, and the other one is trying to be more nuanced and a little bit more contemporary, and that was our goal at least, to tell different kinds of stories. And so I think that's what's helped is that modernizing the characters and modernizing the storytelling is kind of giving it some permanence as opposed to us trying to be 2005 just wooing and grunting our way through the next game.
Yeah, you can't just keep making the same game over and over again.
Right.
Yes. But saying that, I know that you have fans that want you to keep making the same game over and over again.
Totally.
And what's the response? What's the reception? What kind of feedback are you getting from people?
It's largely positive. So we get a lot because, you know, with I was about to give away our trivia, one of my trivia questions. So the helper bot we have with you changes up all the gameplay, which is great. And we have a vehicle now that allows you to travel these sort of really large levels, which changes up the gameplay, and it's really great. And so a lot of people are going like, oh, this is fresh and modern, and I can't believe, and surprising. That's one of the things, we got a lot of flack at E3 about, where's the campaign? I didn't see any campaign. But now when we do it in the last week before launch, everybody's like, this is surprising and refreshing. I didn't know this was coming. And you're like, yeah, because if I told it to you 6 months ago, you'd be bored by now.
Yes, right.
Right, and so, but there's still those people going like, I didn't ask for this chain and I don't want it. And I'm like, I don't know what to do, dude. Like, I mean, there's like, you have to live with you can't make everybody happy. And
dude,
so.
I get flack for reviews of games. I can't imagine what I was thinking about that today. Like people have an opinion about my opinions, which I get. They totally can have that. But I can't imagine like the act of creating something and sending it out in the world that's already loved, and all of the wealth of opinions that you're going to get out. You guys have very thick skin, is what I'm telling you.
Yeah, it takes, like, when you put 3 years in, like, it's a long time. I mean, and so 3 years of blood, sweat, and tears on something you're trying to create, and you're actually trying to create it for other people. Yeah. And so you put it out there hoping they're going to respond well, and for the most part, we have. Yeah. But the occasional, like, quick to judge on, like, the irrational reaction, you kind of, like, I don't get, and that is the hard part. And you sort of, it's the human psyche is to read 10 things and 9 are positive and 1 is negative, and you focus on the 1 negative.
Yes.
And so
we all do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you gotta have to you have to temper it and kind of look at where everything is. And plus, times have changed. When you look at, I think Gears 5 is the best Gears game. But if you go by like Metacritic, you'll look at, okay, Gears 1 was a whatever 92, 94, and we're an 85, 86.
Don't go by Metacritic.
No, exactly. Well,
yes.
And the times have changed, and, and the way that scores are aggregated are different, and the way that people talk about it are different. Mm-hmm. And the 5-point scale drives me crazy because it's either a 4, it's either an 8 or a 10, and no one wants to give you a 10, so it's always an 8. You're like, always an 8, really? Yeah, it's always an 8. Like, God damn. Like,
that's why we never shifted out of the 10 point. I could never go down, and I remember I used to fight with Tom Russo at Next Gen because we had a partnership with them for a while, right? And they had a 5-star thing, and we had the 10, and I said, "Can we just double your thing?" He said, "No, it's 5." You know, Tom. Right. No, it's 5 stars. It has to be 5. So in our reviews back then, we'd have the Next Gen score with stars on there.
Yeah. Well, my favorite are the people who are reviewing stuff they don't like. Like if they were to go to me and say, "Okay, Rod, I need you to do this review on this improvisational jazz album. Could you give me?" And I'd be like, "I wish it wasn't improvisational jazz. 3 out of 10, right?" Like, and so I read these reviews like, "I've never really liked Gears, but here's my review," and you're like, okay, like, I mean, who's that for? Like, who are you writing that for?
That might be a statement about journalism more than anything. More than anything at all.
But I mean, largely the thing for me is when you look at the user reviews and the feedback we're getting online and from the fans, which is who we created for, it's been great. And it's been positive and it's been supportive. Even we had, with any game, when you have like millions of people show up on day one, your servers are going to strain, your scalability is going to strain, and you know, hats off to our community team and our live ops team to updates every hour, and they're working on it, and they got through it. Like, that first weekend was bumpy, but we got through it, and large part people are just like thankful that, hey, you're working hard on it and you're keeping us informed and you're working hard, which is what we want. So it's, for the most part, the fans are understanding and appreciate, which I
the Xbox needed that marquee exclusive, man. It's it's not just a great game, it's not just an awesome achievement, but for the console itself, it needed that, like, oh my God, I can't play this anywhere else except on the PC. But it's, you know.
Yeah, no, totally. And the fact that we try to be like the Dolby Atmos showcase, the 4K 60 showcase, and just trying to take it to another place, which I think we've done with the X. I think we've pushed the X to like incredible heights.
I couldn't believe my eyes.
Thanks.
We're going to give away a few of these, by the way. Thank you all for coming down. First one is going out to Corey, who was playing. Come on up here for a second, Corey, because we don't have a camera on you. But Corey has an enviable task. This is Rod Fergusson. You can look at the camera and say hi. I don't know if you're in focus or not. But Corey's in the film department here, right?
Film production.
Film production at VFS. This is yours. Awesome. And after the show, Rod will sign that. So thank you for playing.
Thank you.
All right. It's not every day you get to play behind the head of the studio.
And he's playing well. I've been watching. He's playing well. Good job.
So carry on, my friend. Okay, so was the idea for launching the game in the staggered way that you did it partially to handle any hiccups that were going to happen with the online play or anything like that?
No. I mean, you mean in terms of early access and
stuff?
Yeah. No, I mean, that was just part of having an Ultimate Edition and having a way. It does help. Yeah. Like, that's one of the things that people don't like, having that notion of a group of people who come in early, you sort some stuff out, so when the full group shows up, we're ready.
We've seen that happen a few times.
Yeah. So it does help, but that was not the intent. I mean, the idea that some people want to play on Friday, and like traditionally games are released on a Tuesday for I have no idea why that is. Right? But that notion of getting it the weekend before is appealing, and so that's something we've always done with Ultimate Editions or the Ultimate Game Pass in this case too. But it did help a lot. We did a tech test for multiplayer, which helped a lot too. But it's just like, you're getting hundreds of thousands of people in a test, and then you get millions of people on the first day, and it's so different now that before it was. You used to be able to watch it crawl across the country. Like you would do, okay, we're available at midnight, so people would go line up outside the store and wait in line, and so that you would see things start to, 1 a.m., people are coming home from the store, here comes the gamers.
Are you guys all up?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you?
Yeah,
I
totally.
bet you are, yeah.
Totally. And so you would watch it crawl across like in sort of time zones, and now the fact that it doesn't do, like people can preload it,
Yes.
people have Game Pass, and so at 12:01 or now 9:01, like 1 million people go now,
Yeah.
and you're like, there's no delay, there's no creep, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, we went from no players to 1 million players in 3 minutes. All of a sudden, like, of course, everything goes boo for a second, and you have to go, oh shit, and turn on a bunch of lights to get it all to come back up or whatever, right? So it's just part of why I think every game goes through that. They're just not ready for that amount of. No matter how much you test,
Yes.
the ability to scale services, because it's actually not the game. Like if you were to look at what goes from a game to a back-end server in a data center in the middle of the country, there's like 4 different middleware providers and different pieces of software that all be like, oh, too much, scale down. Oh no, the pipes are being used like that. Like, and you have, it's not even within our control. You know what I mean? So it's just funny.
I've been to the Xbox Live space at Microsoft, and it's
Right.
crazy. It's like out of Dr. Strangelove or something like
Oh,
that.
totally. And with
Yeah.
with Azure data centers all over the world, like it's like it's crazy. It's like spread out everywhere. But it's just a different time, and you just have to be ready for it. But it's still great to see it like light up like that.
Awesome. We're going to take questions for Rod. So if anybody here in the audience has a question for Rod, or if anybody watching on the stream has a question for Rod, all I ask on the stream is go into all caps, so you're easier on my eyeballs. Okay. And I'll look over here every once in a while. And the secret here, some of you have finished the campaign, and Rod and I are playing nice. We're trying not to spoil
it.
too much, because a lot of people are jumping into the game for this weekend.
Yes.
But some really heavy consequential stuff happens in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a two-sided story. It's a story of what Kate is going through as part of learning about her origins and like what is the family connection to the enemy or the monsters. And then the other side is war comes to Sarah. Like at the studio we joked like Gears 4 is 3 people lost in the wood finding a monster. Like, and that's kind of what 4 was. So 5 we wanted to be like war returns. And with war comes loss. And so that was something we wanted to make sure we had in the game, that as you play there were going to be consequences to what's going on in the game.
And there's always been, a sort of an emotional through line to the gear, like
Right.
Dom losing his wife, and just the heaviness of the
Right.
the world around these characters has
Right.
always been there.
Yeah.
But the tools to show that cinematically have not been at this capacity.
No, I mean the quality of what we can use to do the storytelling. And Greg Mitchell, who's our Cinemax director, amazing Cinemax director, he's been with us since he worked on Gears 1 all the way through. And so the person helping to sort of show that story has been the same, but the technology and the team around him is different.
Yeah.
And so what you see is sort of realizing what the vision actually is. But what I love about Gears is it's one of very few franchises that has a breadth within its tonality of the franchise, that in 1 second we can be very comic book laughy, making jokes, then we can be sort of Fast and Furious action blockbuster set piece to I'm crying because I have to euthanize my wife. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the notion of having a franchise that you can kind of almost go anywhere and it still works as long as you sort of ground it in the world is liberating, for one, because we can tell any story,
Yep.
but it's just really fun because we can go anywhere.
Well, I mean, this is what I wanted to talk to you about, because as I was playing the game, I started to recognize somebody that's played all of these games and finished all of these campaigns.
Right.
And I'm not a diehard that it stays with these games forever, because I've got to review other things.
Sure.
But I've certainly appreciated every experience that I've had with Gears. With this one, I really got the sense that the genres can be started. New genres can be introduced into this world a little, because you're
Totally.
expanding into, in the context of the stories that you're telling, into a bunch of new different ideas. And you did that a bit with 4, with the controlling the robots.
Right.
And now you've got different types of games. You've got a tactical game, and you've got the Funko Pop game.
Right.
Is there a team at the studio maybe doing a little R&D on different ways to approach a Gears game?
Yeah,
Not
I
that
mean,
you can
we
tell
always
us, but-
we're always looking at we're always doing R&D and looking at stuff. I mean, for us, for this one was like the commander's intent. We call it, like people might say, a mission statement or a vision statement, but we're a military game, so we like to use military terminology. So the commander's intent for Gears 5 was challenge expectations.
Yeah.
Because we know that 4 people were saying like, hey, that's a great Gears game, but it feels a little safe. And so we went in going like, okay, how can we challenge expectations? And that was whether through player choice and the things you can do in the game to the way we did marketing, where we put multiplayer on stage for the first time at E3, and we saved campaign till the very end, and those sorts of things. And so, so as we looked at it, we were like, okay, if player choice is one of the ways we can challenge expectations, how do we lean into that? And so things like player-initiated combat, which was a big thing about BioShock Infinite, was around let the player start the fight, don't start the fight without them kind of thing. The notion of having a helper bot that can provide you RPG elements that now I can use. My only verb isn't just the bullet on the end of a gun. Now I can go invisible, or I can solve all these puzzles with putting up a shield or a proximity bomb and those sorts of things. And then the open world elements where like, okay, now we have a level that's probably like 50 times bigger than any other Gears level, that I need a vehicle to be able to go from point to point to point, and handing the keys to the player to control the pace. Because usually we're very we have a lot of pride around pacing, in terms of trying to be a summer blockbuster. And so in this case, it was like, okay, like if you want like your eyes to bleed, go mission, you can do it. Or if you want to be like, hey, that was really intense, I want to go look around for some stuff, and I want to go do some side missions, or just go look for story.
Which is me.
Yeah, well, you can do that, and then the vehicle lets you do that. So it was kind of cool to add flavors of other, like an RPG flavor and an open world flavor without trying to become a new genre. It was just meant like, how can we expand the verbs for Gears into new and interesting ways?
I could feel that.
Okay,
and,
cool.
and me as a consumer of all of these entertainments wants even more of that.
Okay.
And so from me, you have all the agency to experiment and show me what else you guys got.
Noted.
All right? But you mentioned a little helper robot.
Yeah.
And I think that leads into a question that we're going to throw out now. Some of you may know the answer to this, and some of you may already have the game. So play fair, and if you've already got the game, to put your hand up, okay?
Exactly.
But, go ahead and
what
answer.
is the name of the helper bot?
So you choose.
You choose. You're the host.
Okay, we've got this guy. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. There
That is
you
correct.
go.
The answer is Jack.
This baby is yours. Batman is going to give you that one. We'll give it to you afterwards, and Rod will sign that one.
If you
for
want
you.
to sign, I don't want to lower the value of it by signing it if you don't want it.
Okay, we have 2 more, and you can come up with a couple
What is
more.
the name of the vehicle that you drive in Act 2 and Act 3 of Gears 5?
Ooh.
Oh, see? No, Dana, you can't answer.
Dana works.
Our communications director
at
is like, I know.
Coalition. You have the game, Dana.
Oh, but you already have the game because you just finished it. So all this is telling me is that marketing's not working. Our marketing's not working. What's the name? Okay, so no one knows the answer to. The answer is a skiff.
Skiff, yep.
Which is our wind-powered vehicle that you kind of sort of wakeboard behind. What is the new cooperative mode we showed at E3
Oh, that's
called?
a good one. That's a good one. Blake, you're disqualified. You can't answer that.
So 3-player co-op.
You got fans here, but they don't know all the
I know.
details.
I feel like I know.
Yeah. Yeah, and Rich just bought it. Yeah. You got.
It is called
Yeah!
Escape. There we go.
What's your name? Mike. Okay, Mike.
gets
This
Escape.
one is yours. We have one more. Do you want to save it for a little bit?
Yeah, let's save it.
Okay, let's see if I've got any questions here. Rick Savage says, will be the last Gears with Marcus Phoenix? Will this be the last Gears with Marcus Phoenix?
That's a big question.
That's a big spoilery type question.
Yeah, that's sort of when my favorite troll I did over this weekend or this week was somebody said, I haven't finished the campaign, but I really love Foz, and I can't wait to see Foz in the next game. And then I said, clearly you haven't finished the campaign yet.
Oh, you're cruel. That is awesome.
So I would use something similar, like maybe it's the last first game with Marcus. We don't know.
They're at war, guys.
Exactly.
We don't know who lives or who
With war,
dies.
there's loss.
Yeah, this one's a good one. Leighton JT, is Dom going to be an unlockable character?
Is Dom going to be on? Yeah, Dom, as Carlos is very excited to come back. Carlos Ferro is the voice of Dom. I've told him he's coming back as a multiplayer character. So yeah, down the road. So one of the things we're doing as we sort of look at our, we're doing these 3-month operations. Some games will call them seasons, but we're going to be releasing, new characters, new costumes, new maps, new modes, new tiles. But and I couldn't tell you which operation it's in. I'm sure Dana's already emailing people like, oh crap, Rod already announced Dom. But Dom, but yeah, Dom will be a character at some point. Yes.
We just get an exclusive. That's
yeah,
awesome.
exactly.
Eat it there, Jeff Keighley. There you go. Okay, Gears 5 has a big player decision. Will Gears 6 have?
You're gonna go spoilery.
Well, I don't.
No, there's whatever you're asking me about Gear 6, I can't answer.
Okay.
There's the future. The Magic 8 Ball says the future is uncertain.
Okay, future is uncertain. All right. Anything is possible.
Exactly.
Question: this is from Jamie Andrews. What are your favorite creative processes in making a new Gears game? That's a good question, Jamie.
Well, for me, like I have a real personal attachment to the story.
Mm-hmm.
So I work like Tom Bissell is an amazing writer. We have a great franchise narrative lead with Mbani Jinma, and our lead campaign design director Matt Searcy. And so the four of us coming together to kind of like lay out the spine of the story and then to start working through that. That's my favorite part, is kind of coming up, because I'm not like my trade isn't design, and so I kind of come to it from a slightly weird angle, but I like sort of designing within constraints. And so the monsters, we tend to come up with a story, and the monsters and the weapons tend to fall out of the story. We don't sit around going like, I need a weapon that does blah, 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 blah. It's more about, hey, we have this story that needs this kind of thing, and they tend to fall out of it. So I like so we going in and coming up with like, what's the story we want to tell, and then starting to build out that story and finding out who the characters are, and then beginning to write for those. Like I love that part of it. So
you don't start with like the stunt sequences or the big action boss fights, or
no? I mean we think as part of like traditionally anyways, when the more linear games 1 through 4, it's kind of like a road movie, so you're kind of going like, I got to go from point A to point B, and that's one of the big things that changed for us for 5 was the first time we ever did time dilation, where we were actually, because every other one has been like, here's 36 hours in the life of the squad, and so this is the first time we've ever done 3 weeks later or 4 months later, like, and so that actually allowed us to change the characters. Like Kate fundamentally changes between Act 1 and Act 2 because there's a 4-month gap there. And so we do look at like, let's go to cool and interesting places. Like, okay, let's go to a winter wonderland, and let's go to a crazy red desert, and because you need to have cool backdrops. So you do think about that. Like, so going to visit the riftworm skeleton, that's part of what we think about in terms of having set pieces and stuff. So that's definitely part of it, but it's not like we don't start with here's all the action set pieces and now write a story. It's really more about what's the story now, is there cool moments we can have within it.
I wonder, have you ever had a sit-down chat with Amy Hennig from Uncharted?
No.
Because everybody kind of compares your games, and they have in various ways over the years. It's like Uncharted borrowed a little bit of the cover mechanics and stuff.
Sure.
And some of the storytelling in Gears feels like it's a tip of the hat to the way that story is told in Uncharted.
Yeah, I mean, Gear, like people sometimes ask, it changes, but like one of the things for a while has definitely been people ask like, what's the game you wish you made? And like Uncharted 2 was that for me. Like, and there was there's certain things that inspire you to a crazy degree, and like Uncharted 2, like it's gonna sound really stupid and it sticks with me. It's probably the thing I remember most about Uncharted 2, which is really stupid, is the opening cinematic. They're on a boat, and he moves the cooler. And then when he moves the cooler, he exerts through his dialogue while moving the cooler. So he does this thing like, hey, and puts it down.
Yeah.
And that moment of like, oh crap, like the way that they're doing performance capture is allowing his movement to tie to his voice.
Nice.
Which we always separate. We've always, like 1 through 4 mostly, have been like, we have actors doing motion and we have actors doing voice. And so you try to do it as best you can. But that moment of it felt so natural and real. And so that's one of the things we went into 5 going, okay, there's a certain number of these we're going to do PCAP for so that we can have that physical contact be reflected in your performance. But that moment, just like, and it's, like I said, like this weirdest thing, that moving the cooler on the boat of Uncharted 2 has stuck with me ever since I saw it.
That is awesome. I have a question, actually, and anybody that's been following Gears, and this will be for the last copy of the game. What famous actor may or may not be in a huge superhero franchise has just been announced that they're going to be playable in, well, you got one already, going to be playable in Gears 5? What was that? Yeah, you got it.
That's nice.
Yes, this one is yours. All right, fantastic. Dave Bautista, yeah. And you met him?
I have. I've directed him.
Incredible.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, he's awesome. He was really
What a force of nature that dude is, man. When I saw him in Blade Runner, and I mean, he's incredible in Guardians, but he's really multifaceted.
He is. He's really good. Like, and he cares a lot about the performance, and he's just really interesting to work with. And so, yeah, it was really cool to be able to direct him through like, okay, this is the kinds of things we're doing. Like combat chatter is not easy and we tend to like, you have to do anywhere from 800 to 1,000, sort of yell 800 to 1,000 different things as part of becoming a multiplayer character in Gears. And he took it on like a champ and brought his own sort of swagger to it and brought his own attitude, and it was great.
That is awesome. And you also worked with Linda Hamilton,
which is like a career highlight. Like,
how did that even happen?
Well, it just sort of kind of worked out in the sense that their movie and our ship date were somewhat aligned, but also the fact that like I think Sarah is kind of a role model for Kate.
She's the best.
To go from this sort of civilian, starts as a civilian and becomes this, powerful hero that is fighting for humanity, and that's kind of what Kate's journey is, from outsider to now this soldier who's fighting for humanity. And I was nervous, to be honest with you, like because I've worked with celebrities before that it didn't work out at all. Like, and you feel like, Minnie Driver was an example. She told people I was never going to tell anybody, but I fired Minnie Driver because she's a lovely woman and a fantastic
hates video
actress.
Games.
She just doesn't want to yell, and if you're you can't be in a Gears of War game and not yell.
I interviewed her at Sundance, and she hated video games. She like I told her, we're talking to people that are making video game content or play video games. I hate video games. Like, okay, I guess that's not going in the show.
Yeah, well, and I asked her like, so why are you here? And she's like, oh, my nephews love the game, and so I'm here for my nephews. And I was like, cool. And I'm like, okay, yell incoming, and no, like she couldn't yell, and so she didn't want to yell.
Wow.
And so I was like, sorry, I know you're an Oscar-nominated actress, and we're just little old, Gears, but I'm sorry, this isn't working. But so I was nervous with Linda. I was like, okay, Linda may not be, I doubt she's a hardcore gamer, which she isn't. And so I'm like, it's all about attitude and whether you care. And she came bouncing in, and because she had just done a bunch, the previous day she'd done a bunch of zip lining and shooting and a whole bunch of action sequences. So she was all hyped up on adrenaline, and she came in, and I showed her some videos. I showed her the Escape trailer, and I showed her what it was, our Versus trailer, and I'm like, this is what it's going to be like, and this would do. And I showed her a picture of what she would look like in the game. She immediately thanked me for how she looked in it, because she looked great. And then she got into the booth, and she was a joy. Like, she just wanted to, she wanted to deliver the best. And she's actually helped us where we said like, hey, every time an actor is on the mic, we want you to bring you, the character, and same thing for Sarah. And so we got to the only thing she called on was like, when we have a section for down but not out. When you go down and there's like, help me is one of the lines, and she just said, Sarah doesn't ask for help. And so we were like, fine. And so we wrote to like, get over here, come get me. So it was never like in a passive like, help, I need help. Like, she's like, I don't do that. And I'm like, that's great, that's perfect. So
those are the notes you want.
Yeah, totally.
So multiplayer is out there. Do you guys have data on who's playing what? Are people finishing the campaign before they get into multiplayer, or lots of people just jump right into horde mode?
It's a little bit of, it's a sprinkling. I mean, definitely Cliff used to say, come for the campaign, stay for the multiplayer. And we definitely see that. Like, we definitely see people, which is what makes sense to me anyway. I like knowing the characters' context before I play as them. So we're definitely seeing a lot of campaign being played right now. Horde is being played a lot, but a lot of versus too. Like in Arcade has been great, which is like, Arcade is a mode we created for new Gears players. We're like, okay, the movement is not quite so fast, the shotgun is not so prevalent, and so you can actually have rifle fights.
You can live for more than 2 seconds?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's actually taken off, and so we've been really, really excited about how Arcade has been received.
And how is Escape doing? Because this is the brand new
It's doing
one.
great. Like, Dana actually did a call, what are you guys playing this weekend, kind of thing that you would do as a communications director, and a lot of Escape came back, which is great. So we're really excited as a new mode, and we'll have lots more to talk about with that too, especially because you can build maps for it, which is going to be the great thing.
Which is really cool. Yes, I have a question about that too. But
Okay.
the VR Grid asks, who thought of the massive mace that you can wield, and did they get a raise? Good question, VR Grid.
Yes. The Breaker is, I think the big thing was the execution for the Breaker. That was so Jason Hopkins, who's he's now our director of animation, the ability to slam it in and then flip them and throw them, like, that was the animation team. That didn't come from me or anybody in the design team. That was, they went crazy on it.
Sick, depraved, disgusting
Totally.
people.
But all of them are that way. But all the executions are that way. But yeah, no, the Breaker was great. We wanted to. That was one of the investments we did in 5. Is when we worked with the core gameplay team, they really wanted to take melee to another level. Before, like, if you go back to Gears 3, it's kind of an elbow. It's just constantly this.
Yeah.
And we always sort of try to balance. We didn't want to slap fights where people come together and just go, we didn't want that. So we always sort of pulled back on melee.
Yes.
And so this time we actually, with Gears 4, we introduced this close cover combat where you could use your knife. And so in 5, we were just like, oh, let's just go all in. And so then we created the breaker and the iron pipe, and we just wanted to have this thing that it just feels really good and responsive.
Fantastic. Chris Burns says, what is the biggest improvement that you see for the Gears franchise on the next Xbox? And he also says Gears 5 is the best in the series. Great work.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we're not really talking about Scarlet stuff yet. I mean, I think to me, it's just about when you give. I'm less focused on like, hey, what's the thing you're going to do, and more about what's the surprise that's waiting for everybody. You know,
Right.
When you give a piece of hardware that powerful to a bunch of creative people out there in the industry, what I'm looking forward is the things we're not expecting. What is the surprise we're going to get when we get back? When some people say like, oh, I know how to use this power. I'm going to use it this way.
Right.
Because I mean, everybody wants to, like, the easy thing is like, let's talk about 8K. Let's talk about 120 hertz. Let's talk about reduced load times. And I'm like, yeah, but that's like talking about horsepower in a car. I want to tell me about what's the really cool, crazy thing you're going to go do, and
Right.
that's what I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, and it is too soon for that, right?
Yeah, it
It's
is.
still being developed right now. We don't
Totally.
even really know what that is going to be. And honestly, when I played it on the Xbox One X, which this is running off of right now, it looks like a next-gen game.
Thanks.
You know, and then I played it on the S, and it looks like a current-gen game. But you guys did a good job across all of the Xbox stuff.
Thanks.
But Xbox One X just kicks butt. And I've read that
Yeah.
the PC version is like state of the art with ray tracing and all kinds of stuff.
Well, yeah, and you have an ultra texture pack, so you go into the options and you say, I want ultra, and it'll bring down even more assets to make it to go even further with it. And that was the big thing for us, is when we enhanced Gears 4 for X, like, you had to choose, do I want pretty or fast? Like, do I want 4K or do I want 60 frames per second?
Yeah.
And now, for the first time, we're doing the campaign in Gears 5 as 60 frames per second, but it's and 4K. So
Yeah.
you're not making a choice. You're getting, and then on top of that with HDR and top of that Dolby Atmos, like, it's just, like, if you want to convince your significant other to get a better multimedia system, Gears 5 is the way to do it.
Well, isn't that kind of the console holy grail, to get 4K at 60? I mean, we don't have 8K TVs
Right.
probably for another 5 years, I would imagine, in proliferation.
Right.
Do we need a new Xbox is what I'm saying.
I can't answer that, but what I
Yeah.
can say, we always need a new.
I guess so,
don't know.
yeah.
More power is always better.
Yeah.
But no, I think we're in the sweet spot. Like, Gears 1 kind of caused people to go buy HD TVs. Like, that was the thing. Like, I know that I was part of the, if I want to see this game, I got to go. I think we're hitting with 5, I think we're hitting the sweet spot around 4K and HDR.
Yeah.
Because even my brother, because I sent my brother the custom X.
You're so right. The lighting in Gears 5 was the first time in any game on a console, on
Right.
my TV, where I went, holy, that's what HDR is.
Right.
That's really what it is right there.
Yeah, and so when
Yeah.
I sent the custom X to my brother, and he was like, oh, but crap, I don't have a 4K HDR TV, and so now it's just like, I'm going to go buy a 4K HDR TV. You know, so it's just like it's sort of in the sweet spot where now it's more, and I think Atmos is kind of there. I think a lot of people are getting it through headsets and what have you, but the fact that people are having an Atmos conversation, which was not, we had Atmos support in 4, but it was kind of a little ahead of its time, and
Yeah.
now I think it's actually a little bit more common.
And people have it. People
And
live
they're
it.
enjoying it. Like, as you read, that article is mind-blowingly how much they loved it.
This frame is great. I love it. The game is,
The game
is
in
so
the
much a
background.
part of the frame. It's awesome. So the game is it's on Xbox Game Pass.
Yes.
So that must mean that millions of new people are playing this thing.
Yes.
That weren't even ever playing Gears before.
Yeah.
And are you sort of responding to that and seeing that? Is that a
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was one of our big design things going in, is we recognize that, we're going to have millions of people who don't have that barrier to entry. Like, as a creator, you want to tear down barriers, right?
Yeah.
So we did a bunch of stuff around accessibility and to allow new players to play and support the adaptive controller and all that kind of stuff. But then was also just like, if you don't have a $60 barrier and you already have your subscription, or that you can get a subscription for $1, like, literally you can go spend $2 and play Gears 1 through 5, right? And so our anthology is behind $2.
There's a hat for you.
And there's a hat. And so, like, the fact that all these people are coming, they don't have that barrier, means they can go and play.
There's a
And
shirt
so
for
we
you.
had to design, like, boot camp. Arcade was for new players. You know, Jack was for new players. Like, there's a bunch of different ways to do that. So yeah, it was approachability was a big thing for us because of Game Pass.
Is there
Not distracting at all that Victor's throwing stuff out to the crowd while I'm talking.
Just think of me as one of those NBA mascots.
Yeah,
running
exactly. T-shirt gun.
What is the run? Can you give us a sense of how long you guys have content planned for Gears 5? Like, are we going to be getting new things for 2 years? Like, what are you guys thinking?
I mean, that's hard to say. Like, I know, like, we have a definite games as a service is a thing now.
Yeah.
And so it'll probably do more with how we think about what's next. And so as we envision what's next, depending on how long it takes to make what's next, will probably determine how much we support and how long. Because the thing with 4 is that we were 3 years after 4, and we did an esports event and had the highest viewership we had had the entire time. So you can see that there's a sustain and a length.
Absolutely.
And now that we have, for the first time, user-generated content with Map Builder, that people can actually make content for the game.
Yeah.
My hope is that 5 will go even longer than 4.
I think it will.
Okay.
I've got one more question here, unless anybody in the crowd has a question for Rod. Okay, go for it. Jason says, do you feel a responsibility as a studio based in Vancouver to kind of represent the city?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of who we are. Being, since a Canadian developer, believe it or not, almost hit the camera.
Sorry, I know, I'm trying not to hit anything.
I'm Canadian, so I was born in Ottawa, Ontario, and so the notion of trying to represent is part of why I like coming to see Victor. Is part of one of the things about being in Vancouver is to help kind of represent. The thing that you realize, when I came, 2014 was the first time I was ever in Vancouver in terms of staying here to work, and the development community is so tight knit that there's all the people in my studio all know everybody else in every other studio, and it's such a close, collection of people that it's really interesting, and the talent that's here is amazing. So I always feel that's how do we represent, in terms of the Vancouver and Canada as developers, and so it's a big deal. But in terms of being AAA storytelling, that kind of stuff, that's more about being who we are as Gears more than it is about being Canadian.
I've got one from Sam I Am 111. What are some of the ideas that you have to further advance the Gears formula in the future? Any gameplay changes that you have in mind to evolve? Everybody wants to know what's next.
What's 6 going to be like?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we always have ideas. So, yeah, I mean, that was part of let's see what happens with 5. That was some of it is just sort of understanding with RPG elements, what's happened with open world elements, how do people respond. So I think we'll see how people respond to this one and they continue to play, and then we'll see where we go with that.
Awesome. When are we going to see you back here to talk about tactics and the Funko Pop game?
I can talk to you about Funko now. It's doing great.
It's out. Is it out already?
Oh, it's been out.
Oh, it's out. It's a mobile game, though, right?
It's a mobile game. Yeah, it was out August 20th.
Okay.
Is when it launched, and it's doing great. We already announced we had over 1 million players.
I got to play this game. I've been inundated with all the new.
Yeah, no, but we just did a Gears 5 launch event, so there's a bunch of Jack and Kate with the Breaker, which is showing up in Pop if you get to Arena 5, and we'll have some new things to announce around. Rod said this thing too. Around probably near the end of October, we'll have more stuff to announce. But no, it's going really, really well. We've been really excited. And so Tactics, soonish. I mean, I've been telling people, even though I clumped them together at E3 2018, we're trying to kind of give each game its own space.
Yes.
But Tactics is coming great. The game is super fun. And what I love about it is sort of I call it a reduction in terms of if you take red wine and you reduce it down for, to make a sauce, the concentrated essence of what is Gears of War is what Tactics, that idea of fronts and squads working together and flanking and using cover, everything you think you know about Gears is embodied in this turn-based strategy game.
Is that born out of real military strategists playing your game? I've always wondered that about Gears because it's made with a sense of that authenticity.
Yeah, I wish I could say we brought in a bunch of consultants to do that kind of stuff, and we get a lot of people who respond to us who serve and talk to us about that stuff, but not really. We always try to be close enough. It's one of the things I try to manage from a franchise perspective is to be close enough to feel grounded, but not so close that we're doing the 5x5s all the time and we're not doing the Oscar Mikes all the time.
Yes.
And so I try to be sort of what does the average person know about the military instead of what is authentically military,
right?
And so that's kind of the line we walk. But so we try to be cover is really important and you need to be in cover, and that's kind of but we don't do here's how you leapfrog and all that kind of stuff, right? We're not doing those sort of.
And then every once in a while, a thing with giant tentacles will come out and grab you and eat you and put you inside.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
They deal with that all the time.
Rod Fergusson. He is the best, is he not? Congratulations.
Thank you.
On the success of Gears 5, and we'll see you again soon, and much love and some sleep to all of your colleagues at the Coalition.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rod.